The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a couple seconds. We'll let everyone get signed in, so we'll be back with you in just 2 seconds. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Being More Persuasive, a guide to agency owners and producers. I'm Brian Pettiville, Chairman of the IIABCal Emerging Leaders Committee. And with me today, again, is Ira Kasdan. He is from the Insurance and Banking Practice Leader of Impacts Corporation. Ira Kasdan, for more than 25 years, has been a successful sales executive with extensive training experience to help leading businesses increase effective prospecting activity, differentiate themselves by how they sell, and reduce the time to full productivity for new hires. Over the past few years, Ira has worked with more than 35 independent agencies to obtain double-digit growth in sales. For today's webinar, we've muted all of your phones to eliminate any background noise. However, remember, you can go ahead and type your questions in the right-hand side of the Go to Meetings tab. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them in, and we'll get them over to Ira so he can answer all of your questions. So we've got a great presentation ahead for you, so go ahead, Ira, take it away.
Great. Well, everyone, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today to talk about our topic of being more persuasive. I think that all of us would agree that whether you're a producer, an account executive, an agency principal or manager, that we're all salespeople at one level or another. And I think you'd also probably agree that making presentations or sales presentations is a pretty darn important part of selling. Yet when you stop and think about it, what we find over and over again is that few adults have ever been formally trained to make a sales presentation. By the time we're grown-ups, most of us have had some kind of speaker skills training, but it's pretty generic, not specifically focused on selling. So how do we as adults in sales roles learn to make sales presentations? The process is almost always trial and error. Take the set of slides from the guy who had the job before you, take out 3 of his or hers and replace them with yours, and now you're out presenting. But the whole idea is we never know exactly what it should look like or exactly what it should sound like. Well, today, in our short time together, we're going to try and change all that for all of you and provide you with a short course in effective sales presentations. The thing we find about sales presentations is that, first of all, many of us are reluctant to give them. I always think it's very interesting. There was a nationwide survey where they asked people to rank their fears. And the interesting thing, fascinating thing that came back from that survey is the fear of public speaking actually ranked higher than the fear of death. I always thought the comic Jerry Seinfeld's comments about that survey were kind of interesting. He said that means that if you're going to a funeral, the person delivering the eulogy would rather be the guy in the box. So again, a lot of times we have a lot of apprehension about sales presentations. So why is it such a big deal to get good at them? The University of Minnesota did a study on influencing people, and according to their research, you're roughly 40% more influential or persuasive when you stand up and make a formal sales presentation as opposed to just sitting down, having a discussion, or doing a product demo. The same study from the University of Minnesota said that customers are willing to pay an average of 26% more if the provider made a formal sales presentation. So the whole idea is we're playing for effectiveness. We're also playing for profitability, for margin. You see on the slide we say questionable reputation, and I think it's interesting that all of us have given some presentations, certainly been in the room when other people have given sales presentations, and as consumers or customers, we've been on the receiving end of many, many sales presentations over the years. What I'm going to ask you to do is to think for a moment about all the sales presentations you've ever experienced in your life, and you can either just think about the responses or enter them in your chat box as I ask this series of questions. First of all, are most sales presentations too long or too short? Are most sales presentations that you've experienced on the interesting, boring continuum more towards the fascinating and thrilling side of the continuum, or more towards the kind of boring and mundane end? Do they tend to have too little content or too much? Do they tend to be more about the customer, or are they really more about the seller? And if you think about the flow of the information, the flow of communication, is it one-way monologue or two-way dialogue? You know, the reason I ask all of those questions is just the idea that for most of us, even if we do a lot of presentations, sales presentations, we tend to have kind of a negative image of sales presentations. Now, this is actually, depending the way you look at it, a big opportunity for us, because it means the bar on sales presentations is set very, very low. So it's a great opportunity for us to be different and better than all the people we compete with. So over the course of our 20-25 minutes together today, what we want to do is really cover 10 ways to make sure you show well when you present and get what you want more often in those situations. So the first of our 10 ideas is really do your homework. You know, speaking coaches and courses, sales coaches and courses, you know, they use different words to say it, but they all say, know who you're talking to, know your audience, know your customer. Stephen Covey says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. There's an old phrase, no one cares what you know until they know you care. So as part of just getting ready to present, really get to know your audience, not just the industry they're in, but their company or their organization, and try and get a good grasp of the journey that they're on, their profile, who they are as an organization, their objectives or what they want to accomplish, their strategies, how they're trying to get there, and their challenges or issues, what's in their way. You know, one definition of selling is getting what you want by helping people get what they want. And when you think about it, the better you understand your audience, the easier that is to do. Last thing I wanted to mention in terms of doing your homework is part of your homework is figuring out who do you need to make your presentation to. Who is that ultimate decision maker who can say yes and make it stick without anybody else's approval? We find that presenting to a lower level can often reduce your chances of ever getting in front of the decision maker, him or herself. Additionally, what we're going to suggest is that once you've done the required due diligence on your audience or customer, you know, get clear with yourself on what you want to accomplish, what you want to leave with when you're across from that decision maker. And you start by setting a goal. Are you asking them for the order? Are you asking them to hire you, retain you as their broker? Or is it something else you want? Maybe an interim step, like a chance to gather information, review or analyze their current program or coverage, etc. Anyhow, once you have this target clear in your own head, we say write the last page of the presentation first. Be assumptive when you do that. Imagine that you've created such a compelling case for action that the only logical thing for the customer to do now is move forward with your recommendation or proposal. You know, then write out an action plan that shows the steps that need to be taken, who needs to take them, and by when, to take the customer or the prospect from the presentation meeting you're in all the way to and beyond the decision you want them to make. This shows you know what you're doing. It sets appropriate expectations. It also makes it easier for them to say yes because your plan feels more fully baked and easier to implement. Also, get skin in the game. Be sure to include some steps that require commitment or action from the customer. You need something to hold them accountable to ensure they're really on board with your plan. And then lastly, and very importantly, in most cases, your final action step should be some form of next meeting with that same decision maker. If your goal is to get hired or get a BOR or AOR, the next meeting should be to review the relationship as part of a periodic account review or stewardship process. If your goal was to analyze their current program, Next meeting might be to present your findings and recommendations. The key thing is book that next meeting with the decision maker. Otherwise, it's a common experience that whoever the decision maker designates to manage internally to manage the relationship with your agency can often become a gatekeeper and limit your access and ability to get back in front of that decision maker. You know, the next thing is keep in mind that the goal of presenting isn't about how much information you can give. It's really about how much relevant information your audience actually receives and processes that's going to help move them to the action you want them to take. Even the most motivated listeners find it pretty hard to pay attention closely for long periods of time. So choose your content carefully and keep the formal part of the presentation short. We suggest you target 20 minutes or less, and then you can reserve the rest of the time in your meeting for discussion, for questions, for getting deeper into the details. If your message demands more time than 20 minutes, look for ways to break it into chunks with some interaction in between. And then also limit the amount of content you put on each page. Follow the guideline we show on the slide, 3 to 5 bullets per page, 1 to 3 words per bullet. This provides you with reminders of the key ideas you want to cover. Now, I want to do a short demonstration to help make the point. When you write a bullet of 7 to 8 words, there's often not much more to say about it, and you're more likely to just read it. Most of us hate it when presenters read their slides to us. By contrast, short bullets are easy to elaborate on and add value to. They demand expansion and examples. They also keep the audience's eyes and attention on you instead of your slides, and this is exactly what you want, because in the most effective presentations, the real message isn't even the words on the slide or page at all. It's you the presenter. You know, in selling, we say that perception is everything. So when you create the cover page of your presentation, feature the name and or logo of the organization you're presenting to big and in the center of the page. Put your own organization's name or logo smaller and perhaps in the corner of the page. This creates the perception that the presentation is actually about them, the customer, and has been developed specially for them rather than being a standard pitch or a canned dog and pony show about your own company. Additionally, instead of going the traditional route and titling the presentation about your product, an insurance proposal, an employee benefits presentation, a brokerage proposal, make it about the business relationship between your two organizations or about providing a solution for the customer's business. You know, in organizing the content of your presentation, here is a terrific 4-part structure that's a winning combination and flow. First of all, start by talking about them. Play back at a high level your understanding of the customer, their situation, their direction, and their needs or requirements. At the end of the section, plan to ask a confirming question to make sure your understanding is accurate and on track. For example, is that at least a fair understanding of your business or situation and your needs? Their confirmation then paints a clear target for you to hit in the rest of your presentation or with your recommendation or solution. Then go to us. Provide a concise review of the aspects of you and your business and or the solution you're bringing that's most directly relevant to this customer and their organization. Next, highlight the fit. Show what your organization brings to the party and how it maps back to and addresses the customer organization's situation and needs. And lastly, conclude with recommendations on how to move forward. This is the action steps in the timeline we talked about earlier. The acronym to help you remember the flow is TUFA, T-U-F-A, them, us, fit, and action. You know, one aspect of presentations that's a challenge for many of us is how to deal with areas where the customer organization isn't performing in the way or at the level that they could or should. To make this point, you be the customer. Imagine a salesperson or a presenter sharing these observations about your company or organization. You know, even as you just look at the slides, the words on the slide without me saying anything about it, how would you be feeling as the person who runs, maybe owns this organization? I had a boss who used to always tell me, Ira, selling is a social situation. At some level, it should be light and fun to some degree. My old boss used to tell me, Ira, when you paint the situation too dark, too ugly, people don't want to buy. They just want you to go away. So remember, in dealing with challenges and potential negatives, keep in mind the old adage, you never tell a parent their child is ugly, even if it's true. No matter what the issue or problem is, even if the customer has told you about it, it sounds different when it comes from you, and there's probably someone in the room who owns the current situation and might feel thrown under the bus if you talk about them. Now, since many times these challenges or areas of concern are elephants in the room that you can't ignore, and often your solutions and recommendations address them, one safe way to put them on the table and deal with them is to be neutral. And you do this by just removing the adjective or the judgment and just point to them as topics that you understand are on that decision maker's mind. For example, just like we've done on the slide here, and we get the sense that some of your concerns and challenges include technology and quality and processes, etc. You know, the other option is what consultants are masters at doing, and this is to take these issues or challenges and flip them around. Talk about them in a glass is half full rather than a glass is half empty manner. Or in other words, call them out as areas of potential improvement. And here's an example of this. So the best guideline when talking about issues and challenges is simply never talk about the customer or prospect organization going from bad to good. Always talk about helping them go from where they are to even better. No one's going to be angry or get their nose out of joint because you're saying they want to be even better in this area or in that way. You know, the next of our 10 ways to show well might sound obvious, but in my experience, for most agencies and brokers, it's actually more the exception than the rule. And what we're saying here is rehearse, practice before you deliver in front of the customer. While there's a lot of you on this webinar who may be very good speakers, few of us are able to say exactly what we mean in a clear, concise, powerful, professional manner when we're just talking off the cuff. When you're in front of a decision maker to make a presentation, in football terms, you're in the red zone, you're in scoring position. Most often you have invested a considerable amount of time and energy to get to that point. So why put all the work you've done at risk and essentially practice the presentation for the first time when you're in front of the decision maker? Instead, remember you've got one shot to make a good impression and be ready to deliver as well as you can. So how do you get there? First of all, say it aloud. The only way to rehearse a presentation is by actually saying all the words. If all you do is flip through slides or pages and think about what you intend to say, everything flows effortlessly and flawlessly. But the first time you try to actually get the words out of your mouth, it's usually a completely different story, choppy, long, redundant, often unclear. The way you get better is practice and repetition. Good rule of thumb, say all the words end to end at least 3 times before you present to the customer. Time it. In how many different circumstances have you been part of a presentation where you or someone else on your team think a topic or a page will take 2 minutes to cover, and in real life it takes 20? If you time the presentation, you'll actually know for sure. Deliver the presentation without notes. Do enough rehearsal so you can deliver the presentation using just the short bullets on your slides to trigger your thoughts. When you do that, it's impressive. It shows how well you know the customer's business and how hard you work to prepare and get ready. It also sets you apart from everyone else. When you simply read facts and figures off the slide or from note cards, all it shows is that you can read, and most of your competitors can read as well. You know, if other team members are going to help you deliver the presentation, include them in the rehearsal. And two, make sure everybody on the team knows their role, what they're going to cover, and how long they have to cover it. Even designate somebody on the team to keep time and ensure no one on the team runs too long or takes the presentation off track. A few other things before we wrap up. When you present, it's important to start and finish strong. This is because of what's known as the laws of primacy and recency. In any meeting, any conversation, any event, people remember two things more than anything else: what happens first and what happens last. So if you start strong and you close strong, it makes up for a multitude of mistakes in between. Pardon me. A few tips on each of these two bookends of your presentation. First of all, in the opening, after you thank the decision maker for the opportunity to present and state your case, confirm how much time you have for the meeting. Say something like, I believe we set an hour. Do we still have that time? Forewarned is forearmed. If anything's changed, you'd much rather know before you start, while you still have the option to compress your message or, if necessary, to reschedule. Next, review what you want to accomplish, the objectives of your presentation, and your roadmap or agenda for getting there. And finally, keep it brisk. Most decision makers have very short attention spans, so keep those opening comments to 90 seconds or less. If you're going to err or make a mistake, be too fast instead of too slow. Relative to the closing, how you end the presentation, when you review your action steps, as we said before, be assertive and assumptive. You know, outlining what you think should happen next in traditional selling terms is an assumed close. Your tone and demeanor really need to match your words. Review the next steps just like they're a plan, like you're explaining a project plan, an implementation plan. Not arrogant or condescending, but not wishy-washy. Gosh, is this okay? Either. It should be factual, like Mr. Spock on Star Trek. Right? We're going to do this by this date. We're going to do this by this date. You'll do that by that date. We'll be back here counting all the money you saved by this date. Factual, like a plan. RCF, build to a crescendo, a rousing closing finish. The customer is not going to be more enthusiastic about your plan than you are, so resist the temptation to let your energy level drop off just because you're on the final page. And then lastly, transition to the discussion after the presentation. So when you're done talking about your action plan, ask the decision maker an open question. You know, say something like, this is what we recommend. How do you want to move forward? Or what's your overall reaction to what we've shared? You know, one of the key things about being a good presenter is to be a good storyteller. Storytelling is a very effective way to communicate. So when you show those slides with the short bullets, tell a story around each bullet. Elaborate or expand on the points you want to make. Say more about what you mean by it. Maybe give an example or two. You know, tell a story in logical order on each page of the presentation. And the key word here is logical. What's the storyline? Are you going from most important to least, least important to most? Chronological order, in order of time, reverse chronological order, grouping related ideas together. Any one of these can work. Just decide what the storyline is that makes the message most interesting, engaging, and easiest to follow. And then make smooth transitions between the pages of the slide, of the presentation or the slides. Pre-announce each slide by saying a few words about what it covers before you show it. When you do this throughout the presentation, it shows a lot of preparation and it makes the presentation look seamless, much more like a movie or a video rather than a set of slides. Ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. You know, and lastly, vary your tone. The desired tone for each section of the presentation is what we've got shown on the slide. The opening, Your tone should say that you're prepared. Be crisp. You know exactly what you're there to do and how you're going to get it done. When you're in the them section, talking about the customer, their business, their organization, the tone is humble, deferential, a confirming tone and demeanor rather than an informing or lecturing tone and demeanor. You want to qualify or soften most of your statements with indefinite words like it seems, it sounds, it appears, we heard, we observed. Then you get to the us section, talking about your company and solution. Now all that humble tone goes away, supremely confident. Not we hope, we strive, we try, we like to think. What we are, we do, we know, we're sure. And then the fit, when you bring the two together, excited, enthusiastic about the great match between your agency and the customer or prospect's organization, and how well you can support and advance the priorities they've set for their own business. And action. You know, be assumptive, as we said before. Make it clear this is the only logical way to move forward. So there you have it. Now, we've gone through these 10 key ideas very quickly, but I promise you, if you take them to heart and make them integral to how you present, you'll get the results you want more often. We're going to have on the InsureFest website a version of a presentation, an example of a presentation that follows some of the guidelines that I've talked about in our webinar today. So if you have an opportunity, check out the website and see that presentation example. It, I think, will put a lot of what we've talked about in context and help make it even clearer. I appreciate the time everybody spent with us today. We certainly value your attention. I hope everybody got something out of our webinar that you're able to use, and I hope we'll have a chance to meet you in person and talk more about what we talked about in this webinar and the prior ones that I've done at InsureFest in Rancho Mirage in late in October. So that's what I've got. Thanks everybody for joining.
Well, thank you, Ira. I'd like to now open up the webinar for any questions you might have. As I said before, you want to go ahead and type those questions on the right-hand side in the Go to Meeting Webinar section. We already have a few questions coming in, Iris, so I'll go ahead and start off with the first one here. Can you offer some tips to being more authentic in your approach rather than sounding too rehearsed and planned?
You know, I think it's a great question about how do you sound more authentic. If you have listened to a great speaker, a great public speaker, a great motivational speaker, you know, they sound very authentic, they sound very natural, but they are among the best rehearsed people in the world. They know exactly how many steps they take across the stage before they stop, turn, face the audience, hit their head, pause, and then add a couple of comments. So well rehearsed that it comes across as natural. Think about television, think about movies. All that stuff is scripted, but it comes across as natural because there's more rehearsal rather than less. So how do you become more authentic or come across as more authentic? It's actually more rehearsal, more practice. That is actually, I know it's counterintuitive, but that's really the way it works. The more you say the words, the better you'll get at it, and the more you'll have them you know, really drilled down and embedded in your memory so you can be more into the moment and deliver them well.
Very good. The next question, I know I personally, this has come to mind during some of my presentations, but what's the best way to ask a question to make sure you will be presenting at the right level?
Well, I think a great question to ask as part of your sales process is the question of tell me about, or please describe for me your decision-making process, who gets involved, and help me understand the roles they play. That's a good question to get people to walk through it. If somebody tells you they're the decision maker themselves, you know, most true decision makers kind of push the decision away. So if somebody says, well, geez, I'm the decision maker, talk to me, go through me. A good question to ask in that situation is, help me understand, you know, once a decision's made, what's the rest of the process? Who else gets involved and what are their roles on the backside of the decision? Often you'll hear something like, I take it to my boss, he rubber stamps it, and then you know where the decision is really made.
Great, great. We've got time for a couple more questions here. Just a reminder, folks, go ahead and type those questions on the right-hand side and we'll get those to Ira. But the next question here is, what is your opinion on using iPads or laptops versus printed presentations?
Yeah, first of all, I love using iPads in presentations because a lot of times I think in the insurance business we're actually delivering presentations not in a big meeting room, but in someone's office or some cases in somebody's cube, and so it's often one-on-one or one-on-two. An iPad is a great, or a tablet is a great way to have very simple slides, but to give the presentation a high-tech look and feel, so I think that's great. A laptop is okay. My only issue with a laptop is sometimes there's a hum from the drives, or it's a little bit noisier, and a laptop is a little bit clunkier to work around. So I tend to like tablets, but paper, a paper copy works. Projected PowerPoint works. Some people use big flip charts. That works. I mean, I don't know that the medium is the most important. I think a lot of it is, working on your message, working on your structure, working on your delivery.
Great, great. And just a reminder, we did have a question about asking if these slides will be made available. And yeah, we will have those available shortly on our website at www.insurefest.org. And with that, Ira, I want to go ahead and wrap this up, and we're coming up to the end of our time here. And I really do want to thank you again for all the information you're providing to our members. I certainly believe it's things that everyone can take back today and put to work. So I want to make sure everybody remembers to go and visit our website, as I said, and hear more from Ira. On the pre-recorded webinars will be on the website. You can find us at www.insurefest.org. And today's webinars, it'll be on there, as well as the previously recorded webinars, just in case you missed those. There's a lot of great information. And as Ira said, he will be out as a presenter at our InsureFest, and that is on October 24th through the 26th at the Las Palmas Resort and Spa in Rancho Mirage. And you can register, find information, get all the information about hotels and everything like that at that website, www.insurefest.org. And so, Ira, I want to say thank you again, and we will be seeing you out there in October. And once again, folks, have a great day, and check out our website for all the information. Take care.